Hey, what's up guys? It is MetaGamesGX here, and this is going to be my first place Ryzeal deck profile that we recently got in a Discord tournament where it was about like 20 or so people just playing post crossover breakers, and I ended up taking it after 4 rounds. Now, I feel very confident because I've tested all the other variants, show you guys some other things that other people haven't been going over with this deck, and if you guys want to see more Ryzeal content, comment down below and let's get right into it. So, essentially, the Ryzeal cards are busted. It's a rank 4 toolbox deck that turbos multiple rank 4s a turn. It eats hand traps like nothing, and it really doesn't lose to one card. You get to house like almost 15 to 20 hand traps or non-engine slots. So the Ryzeal monsters are super busted. Ice Ryzeal is a 1-card combo. It's your best normal summon in the deck. You can just go normal summon, then special summon 1 Ryzeal monster from your deck except for ice. So you can either special summon Sword, which on summon either normal or special. You get to search 1 light pyro monster, which essentially means you're going to be searching either X Ryzeal or Ice Ryzeal. X Ryzeal on normal or special summon gets to search a fire thunder monster, so you can obviously then search a sword or a node Ryzeal. And X Ryzeal also you can special summon it inherently from your hand if you send a Xyz monster from your extra deck to the graveyard. So you could send the Mereologic Aggregator to the graveyard, which is an interruption, so it allows X Ryzeal to out cards like Baguska just automatically on its own. It also doesn't start a chain, which is going to be a recurring theme with this deck, and like I said, it also extends, so it's a great 1-card starter as well. And Node is the worst one that you run, but it's a revive and it specs itself, so it's going to be one of the ones you search towards the end of your combo. It also allows you to use dead bodies really well, and you get to send a card from your hand or the field to the graveyard to special summon a Ryzeal from your graveyard, so it does at least generate a rank 4 once it hits the board. Those are the Ryzeal plugin. Ryzeal plugin's broken. We're gonna have to talk about this. This is the most important card in the deck, honestly, when it comes to setting up your end board properly to not just get blown out to a single board breaker, because the plugin allows you to do a lot of different things. Ryzeal like Plasma Hole, which is another really broken card in this deck. Ryzeal Plasma Hole and plugin really are just like the best little tech cards this deck has. So Ryzeal plugin also allows you to target one of your Xyz or Ryzeal monsters as banished or in graveyard, which allows you to play through shifter with this deck. So basically, if your boss monster Detonator gets banished, you are going to be able to go Ryzeal plugin and then revive it off the banish. And then also what you get to do is attach 1 Ryzeal card from your deck to a rank 4 Xyz you control. You can't attack anymore that turn, but that's totally fine. This is more or less for extension or to play through board breaker, because you're going to attach something from your deck to the detonator. Presumably it's going to be the Plasma Hole, because Plasma Hole has a graveyard effect. You can bash this card from your graveyard immediately after this effect resolves. Xyz summon 1 Xyz monster using monsters you control, including a Ryzeal monster. And the on-field effect is also a pop, depending on how many Ryzeal Xyz monsters you control. So it's typically a pop 2, which makes it a great onboard piece that you're also able to search out. But the graveyard effect is way more important in my opinion, because it allows you to play this deck to its max effect. It allows you to Xyz on your opponent's turn, which is very devastating. And this is actually why you run certain cards like Typhon and Sky Zeus, because you're a rank 4 deck, which you get locked into rank 4s upon using any of the special summon effects basically of the Ryzeal. So this is important to note as well. So do any effects before using the specials of these cards if you want to run other engines, but this is why we're not. This card allows you to go into Zeus or Typhon on your opponent's turn, or even an Exciton Knight, which Exciton is also a quick play field nuke if you have less monster cards than your opponent, which is just crazy. And you can just quick play summon it off a Plasma Hole, which is something a lot of people I'm seeing just aren't doing with Ryzeal. So you have to be able to do that, because you can go Typhon on your opponent's turn. Basically, if they summon twice from the extra deck, you can summon out a Typhon for free, which can stop a lot of decks. You know, it stops the mirror because it turns off the detonator also if they go into detonator. And then also the making a Zeus with 2 materials as a quick play is just devastating too if your opponent goes into battle phase as well. It kind of requires some jankery to get out to Zeus, but I think having this card is very important. And then the field spell is so good. We won't even talk about this, but it's basically doesn't start a chain, right? Effect negate, monster effect negate. So it's your nib out. It's also a Pot of Avarice, recurs 2 Ryzeal cards from your graveyard back to your deck, and then you draw a card. Also, you get to detach a material on the resolution of a chain essentially to negate a monster effect. This does not even start a chain. It's crazy. It's actually crazy. So you could actually chain on top that nib and then still Ryzeal cross the nib. It's crazy, actually. So this card's very important. We're running 2 because we're also running Pav Desires. So this is typically only a 1 of because you don't want to see more than 2. However, I actually really like running 2 because like Desires is a great card. You need more extension in this deck. That's why we're running Desires. We don't, I mean, Bonfire is obviously at 3 right now, but Pav Desires is very good in this deck because you run all multiples. As long as you don't banish all 3 of something, you're just fine. And even if you banish all 3x, you're fine. All these monsters are a means to an end. They're not very specific. They won't take it personally. You know, you're trying to just bust out rank 4s because a lot of them are just generic. And if you get your first rank 4, you get to go to the duo drive, then duo drive effect, you go +2, and you're kind of just off to the races because you search the trap, you search cross, you search plugin. Also, I did want to talk about how Ryzeal plugin is how you play around board breakers, essentially, because your opponent will end up going like, let's just say Raigeki, or I mean, obviously Detonator has the outs, but essentially if your opponent outs your Detonator, you can obviously, like I said, revive it, and then you have it back on the field, which is really important to be able to play through board breakers, because a lot of the time people are gonna just look at a board breaker and just shove it in your board, and that will hurt your deck. Like, your deck does hurt to droplet, your deck does hurt to things like Book of Eclipse if you don't play properly. This deck does hurt to Ultimate Slayer for sure. So having things like Ryzeal plugin actually allow you to at least still play the game and still recur the Detonator and then get the material back on, so it turns back the field spell, so you at least have Plasma Hole back on, because if you aren't able to have a Ryzeal Xyz monster, your game plan's dead. So plugin is actually less of an extender on your turn and much more of a end board piece to set on your turn. A lot of the time people were just searching Ryzeal Plasma Hole and cross off of duo drive, but in my opinion, you should be searching plugin and probably the field spell. This is why I like running 2, because you get to open the field spell a little bit more, so I can always search the hole or the plugin. But a lot of the time plugin will just attach the Plasma Hole, like I said, so Plasma Hole just ends up to be just being a card you don't want to search out. But you know, worst case, this is also an extender, but you want to save the plugin. End on plugin, guys, if you want to be playing this deck right. This is the number 1 tip I can give you with this deck. So after that long-winded explanation on the Ryzeal monsters, we're just gonna go over the non-engine super quickly. We have 1 Nibiru. This is because I want to be able to draw a Nibiru for the mirror match, or Ryzeal or Maliss off of my Mulcharmies. Essentially, Nibiru does nuke the mirror match, and it also does nuke Maliss, and Maliss is a deck that really can't do much in the face of Nibiru, and they don't end on a whole lot after that. So I think Nibiru is really nice as a 1-of. I don't want to brick on it. It is a once per turn, and I can probably draw off of my Mulcharmies, which I am running 3 Fuwalos and 1 purrely. Why the weird ratio with the 1 purrely? Because it's still a level 4, so there's some weird hands where actually normal summon Mulcharmy actually helps you get to a duo drive, because it is a generic level 4 or rank 4, so you can actually make duo drive with a Mulcharmy worst case scenario. So it makes it a lot better in this deck. But also Fuwalos, obviously Maxx, so you run it, in my opinion. And then purrely, I just want to be able to open a Mulcharmy at least 1. So having 4 at least lets me not really brick on them, you know, going first. But also I get a good chance of opening 1 going second. And also, Fuwalos, you don't want to see too many of them also, so that's why I'm not maxing out on purrely going first, or sorry, in my main deck, because you don't want to actually see them going first. Especially this deck actually draws, because you have the field spell, which draws you a card. You have a few other ways to draw cards, especially if you go into Dugaris. So I think a lot of the time you do not want to be drawing these going first, and if you have 6 of these in your main deck, I feel like you're going to be drawing way too many Mulcharmies. So we're only running 4 in the main deck. It's totally fine. I know some people are actually just going for the 20 hand trap build, like shout out to Lucas Sacco. Great videos also. I'm just not too much of a fan. We're actually running 17 hand traps, and then we are running also 1 called by 3 crossout. So I think that ratio allows us to not brick, because we're still running 3 Pav Desires, and then the rest of the hand trap package, which is 3 Ash, 3 Ghost Mourner, and 3 Veiler, and then 3 Imperm. I think Ghost Mourner is incredible this format. This is something I saw in the OCG crop up a lot. I think Ghost Mourner is incredible right now, because you want target effect negates for things like duo drive or the Maliss searcher links, basically, because completely stop these decks in their tracks if you are able to Ghost Mourner them. Ghost Mourner is just incredible too. There's so many just like on summon, special summon monsters that can you know, special summon. So I think Mourner is just great. Also, I think the effect damage is incredibly good in Ryzeal, because you don't have the biggest monsters. OTKing isn't that difficult in this deck, but it's not the easiest, because you're still a rank 4 deck, so you're limited to rank 4 bodies. you know, the maximum being like a 3000. So I think that having Mourner actually to soften up your opponent is huge in this deck, because a lot of the time you'll open Mourner off of your like Mulcharmy or just hard open it, and then you do 1500 to 2500 damage to your opponent from with a lot of these monsters between, and then you're already softening up your opponent for the OTK. It's actually really good in that respect. I love Mourner in this deck. It's crazy. Highly recommend. And then Valor's just great still, and then 3 Imperm. I think that's what you need. I've considered DD Crow. I think DD Crow could also potentially be a spicy option in here. I wouldn't run more purrely, like I said, because of my reasoning before. And I think Ghost Ogre is also something you could consider, guys. If you start running more than 17 hand traps in this build at 40 cards, you start just opening hands of 5 hand traps, and I don't want to be doing that. Like, as much as I like running or seeing hand traps, you still need to see 1 extender at least. And that's why we're also running Crossout, because it's almost like a pseudo like non-engine, because of the fact that it gets you to your combo. A lot of the hands you'll see are like 3 to 4 hand traps plus 1 extender. So you need your bonfire to basically resolve. You need your, you know, your duo drive to resolve. So having Crossout there, plus, you know, Called by the Grave to call the Ash or call the Imperm on duo drive is very important, or even just the Imperm on ice if that's your only extender. I think without running Crossout, you're going to lose way too much to Imperm pass with this deck, so I think you kind of need to run Crossout, in my opinion, just from the testing I've had, or else you need to run more of a gassy build to play through the hand traps, and like the pure build, you kind of need the Crossout. Like I've seen Triff and other people run like the shark build, and then there's the Melodious build, which generates you advantage. At the end of the day, these builds are great, but they're just adding bricks that aren't as good as your Ryzeal cards or your hand traps, essentially, in combination with your Ryzeal cards. Because if you open a hand of 3 hand traps, Ryzeal card and Crossout, you win the game. Like that is like the equivalent to like Chandra, Field Spell, Kaiman, and Tenpai, you know, this very common hand that if your opponent basically doesn't have an Imperm, you die, essentially, right? Like, I think Crossout, it makes a lot of sense. At 2, I'm trying not to brick on it. At 3, it gets a little bricky, so we're just running it at 2. I'm siding the 3rd, and then 3 Bonfire. This is like the best extender in the whole deck. It's probably going to go to 1 next ban list, so it is what it is. I wouldn't invest too hard in it. And then 3 Pot of Desires. Also, we're also getting a replacement for this in the light duelist pack in February, so don't worry. And then 3 Pod Desires. I've seen people run Small World. I've seen people run other things too over Pod Desires. I think Pod Desires is just the best one for the pure build, because you don't care about your pop banishes. Honestly, the only thing that sucks is if you banish your Ryzeal plugin or your Plasma Hole, and that doesn't even matter that much, because you still just are generically making an end board of just like 2 to 3 Exceedus plus hand traps plus like whatever Ryzeal spells and traps you can kind of jam in there. So Pod Desires is great. It's always a +1. We took this from Branded. Now we're running it in here in 40. It's just, oh my gosh, you're always going +1. It's really good for playing through hand traps too and baiting ashes and stuff like that. It's just a great card. The banishes have never really hurt me too much on this one in this deck, so I highly recommend. And I don't like Small World because the bridges aren't that great. Like, you have to like required to open up when your hand traps, you're going neg for Small World when you can just run Desires and go +1, right? So why not? And that's the main deck. Sorry for the long-winded explanation, but it is the first Ryzeal deck profile. We are going to have an IRL deck profile of Ryzeal pretty soon, so don't worry, we'll get into that. All right, so for the Ryzeal XCs, 2 Detonator and 2 Duo Drive. So these are the reasons why you run the decks, because their XCs are like way too busted. These cards, like, one of these cards are going to get banned one day, I think. So Detonator is basically a modern day Zodiac Trident. It basically, when your opponent activates a card or effect, it takes 2+ Ryzeal monsters, and when your opponent activates a card or effect, you can quick effect detach a material from this card, which it does detach for cost, which is really important because some of these do not, and then target 1 card on the field, destroy it. So basically, and this is not once per turn. And also, if this card is special summon, you can attach 1 monster from your graveyard to this material. So this is obviously how you can also keep cycling the Mirrorly Logic aggregator because it's on special. So when you go plugin, you can obviously just attach 1 from your deck and then go Detonator effect on summon to attach again. So you automatically get 2 materials on Detonator off a plugin. That's why, like, saving the plugin, you save the plugin, guys. It's so good. Like, you always have like a 2 to 3 like Detonator, and then you still have like Field Spell and Whole Thruster live plus a huge body. So it's just great. A lot of the time this thing will get to 3 to 4 materials too. You want to keep the materials up because, like I said, it's not once per turn. So a lot of decks just can't deal with a pop 4 a lot of the time, and this is obviously on, you have to, it's reactive, so you can't just quick effect use it, but I think that's just fine. Duel Driver is a +2. You get to search any Ryzeal card in your deck if you detach for card effect, detach 2, and then you can search 2 Ryzeal cards. So this card's actually great because it allows you to basically make the rest of your end board. You need this card to resolve a lot of the time, and if it doesn't resolve, your board gets basically 50% weaker, I think, but that's why you try to build a layer board. This is also a great way to get follow-up. Also, a lot of the time I see a lot of people struggling with this deck's follow-up game because it doesn't have a clear grind game, but a lot of the time you don't need to go hog like buck wild. A lot of the time you can just make 2 exceeds with a bunch of hand traps and then the field spell and stuff like that, and you'll just be fine. So Duel Drive is going to be searching some follow-up if you already have field spell or anything like that, so remember that. Definitely keep your follow-up in play. And also it is an attack adjustment. If it has, for each material your opponent loses 100 attack it has, and then you gain 100 attack, so this is pretty interesting. Also, when it's special summon, you can attach 1 Ryzeal from your graveyard as material. And so yeah, this card just does everything you want to resolve, and if it doesn't, you're sad. And then for the rest of the Xyzs, you're running 1 Zeus, 1 Typhon. We went over why we ran these, and then the aggregator. And then Zeus, also this is great for the grind game Typhon after breaking board. Same with Zeus, because you make Exoton and then you can go into Zeus. So I think these all come up and they well warrant their stay in the deck, even though on paper it's like, why do you run these in a rank 4 deck? But it makes sense because of the whole thruster. We went over that. 1 aggregator, I've seen builds run 2. I think 1 is all you need. You constantly recycle this card, so I don't think you really need the 1. And then off of plugin, and then you send back the plugin off of cross, because remember, this can spin any Ryzeal card. It's crazy. And then also the full armored Utopic Ray Lancer. This is another battle phase. Exceeds that it basically negs all your opponent's monsters for 500 attack points, so it helps you get over big bodies. But then also at the start of the battle phase, you can make all your opponent's monsters lose their effects, so negate all of their effects, so of attack position monsters, so it's pretty good. And then also it can make 2 attacks, so it's just a great battle phase. Lots of battle phase stuff out of this. You can make this off of any rank 4 after basically pitching a spell. So Dead Desires, Dead Crossout, not bad. Baguska's great. It's your shifter line mode. And then we have 1 Baguska. This card's great for certain... It's mainly your shifter line. You aren't actively going into this card. It's really bad in the mirror match, because the mirror match is also just crazy, because I feel like the person going second always has an advantage in the mirror match, because your engine board breaks so well, because you have X Ryzeal, you have Exoton. There's actually a lot of board breakers in Ryzeal. I have to give it more credit. It has a lot of board breaking capabilities, and it makes it so the mirror match, basically whoever goes second kind of wins. So I kind of want to, I feel like in the mirror you actually want to go second, like, and just side board breakers, and you know, having the extra card is just so important in the mirror match, so that's something to do. And then Baguska is just there, like I said, because the shifter, and just certain decks just insta lose to Baguska, so you can just play this under. And also you can keep attaching materials to the Baguska, which is hilarious, through things like plugin. And then 1 Castel. I've seen people run number 38 or the Tachyon monster, which basically non-target destroys a card. I like Castel because it spins a card. So I prefer to just use Castel. In my opinion, it gets over Mirror Jade. Without having Castel, you don't have an out for Mirror Jade. Obviously, like, Branded's Rogue, but like, I don't want to ever have not an option for a card, especially a card as powerful as Mirror Jade. And then also it just helps get over other cards. It's just a detach 2, spin a card back to your deck. Also, the number 38, the card comes back, so I just prefer Castel. I think it's better. And then the destruction, sometimes they'll just trigger stuff, so like, you don't want to do that against Fire King. Fire King's still going to be in the meta, you know, Snake Eye Fire King. Like, besides Maliss and Ryzeal, there will still be Snake Eye, Fire King, Tenpai, and Memento, and all that fun stuff. So you still have to have your toolbox, so it's really good for that. Abyss Dweller for essentially Memento, and then also more importantly Fire King. And then Dugaris, this card's crazy. This is your typical 3rd Xyz on your end board, because if you have like a hand like with a discard and you want to draw into more hand traps after like going through like 10 cards in your deck, Dugaris is there to draw 2 and then discard 1. You do lose your draw phase after, so you want to use this when you're kind of ahead and you do have follow-up, because you don't draw, so make sure you have follow-up when you use this. I've seen so many people make this monster and then they don't have follow-up and they insta lose because of that, so don't even make Dugaris if that's the case. But it's great for drawing hand traps, so I love it. And then 1 Rafflesia. We do side the Gravediggers, so it's good for like hitting like just random hand effects. But it's also there because you can send Hole Thruster to the graveyard because it is a hole card, which a lot of people don't realize. So you don't even actually need the Gravediggers, to be honest. It's mainly there to send the hole, which is really good, like I said, for getting like a Typhon or like a Zeus on your opponent's turn or Exoton. So yeah, it's great for that. And then one Donner, it's for interesting situations where you need to like out a card, and you going into a link helps you, especially like Baguska too, just for like the mirror if you don't have the X Ryzeal. So it's just great for that, just just clearing bodies. And then for the side, 2 more purrely because this card's great against things like Fire King and Ryzeal. It's not good against Maliss though. That's why I'm not trying to main deck more of these. I could also side more Nibiru's, but we're not in this build because I don't think Maliss will be really that represented yet. We'll see how it goes, but if Maliss becomes more represented, like second, third best deck, I think siding Lancias might be a thing, or more Nibiru. I was actually debating right now. I think siding Nib over Lancia is probably correct because like Lancia doesn't hit enough more and Nib just does the same thing essentially. And then 1 Harpy Feather Duster because it's great against Maliss. Maliss sets like 4 or 5, and then Labyrinth is also going to be one of the best decks. Labyrinth has one of the better matchups into the new meta, and Harpy's Feather Duster helps just clear those decks. It's also not bad in the mirror match. 1 more cross out for going first or the mirror match. I think this card also really just helps in the mirror match. Like the mirror match is so it's really not it's a very technical mirror match, and you can lose upon like 1 misplay. So I think cross out just is there to give you the edge. Droplet's like the best board breaker this format because Shifter is going to be on the out because you don't want Shifter Maliss, you don't want Shifter Ryzeal for obvious reasons that we went over. So I think that Droplet's gonna be very good, and it's also very good to just like, it's one of the only board breakers that really breaks a Ryzeal board, and then also it's great against Maliss, and then it's just great against all the other old decks like Tenpai, Fire King, Snake Eye. So, and then 1 D barrier because we gotta be able to call cross out, so or it with cross out basically because everyone's gonna be siding this card. Everyone's siding this for Ryzeal in anticipation, so our games 2 and 3 are going to be quite hard if we are going second. So I think it's mandatory to run D-Barrier plus Crossout going second in this deck. Unfortunately, it is what it is, but at least you can hit the hand traps as well. And then 3 Evenly. Evenly is great in the mirror match, and it's also great in tandem with Droplet. These are the 2 like best board breakers in the game, so I love Evenly in this deck, honestly. I was thinking about running Thrust as well, maybe over like a couple of the Evenlies, but I love Evenly and Droplet, so I want to hard open them. 1 Gravediggers, and then 3 Solemn Judgment. 3 Solemn is like so good in this deck because you don't want, like, obviously board breakers don't do a ton, or destruction board breakers don't do a ton because Detonator also has a secret effect where if your opponent tries to use a destruction effect, you can detach a material from Detonator, and that's not once per turn. So Detonator is just broken for against Tenpai because you can just leave your monsters in attack, and then they go like Lightning Storm, you detach off Detonator, and you still have like big bodies that they can't get over because of like things like Duo Drive, and then also just like your constant pop that you can pop their field spell and stuff like that. So Solemn Judgment's just there though for like random things like, you know, Droplet. It's also great for, you know, just other options, other board breakers. I don't love it, but I think it's very solid in Ryzeal. So it's just a lot of the time you're losing to board breakers more than hand traps in this deck. So just having it there as an extra interruption is very huge in my opinion. All right, so I'm going to show you some Ryzeal combos quickly and then talk about like the end boards you should be making and stuff like that. So the normal ice combo goes like this. You go normal ice, and ice is going to special summon out the sword, and then sword on special will be able to special or get out the extra Ryzeal to your hand. And then here you could obviously just go into the Duo Drive, and Duo Drive is going to detach 2, and hopefully you don't get, you know, hopefully you don't get, you know, impermed or anything like that. And then you are going to search here the cross, and then also the plugin. So some people search field spell like I mentioned before there. I think that's wrong, and at this point you're +2, so you're doing just fine. And then you can activate field spell. Field spell is currently not live because you need something attached to Duo Drive to activate it, but that's fine. Obviously, if you have more gas, also you can also set up to where Duo Drive attaches, so this is live. So that's something to try to do if you can. But you know, in this situation, it's just fine. We're currently still under nib, so we're just fine. Go X Ryzeal, send the aggregator, and then on summon, we can go X Ryzeal effect. And now here, either if you have more gas, you go for the node, or if you have the 1-card combo, so basically no other extenders, you go for the sword, because the other one's kind of useless at that point, and then you can just special summon out the sword because you still have its end-hand effect, and then you can make the detonator and then put detonator in attack position, just because you want the attack and then detonator effect to attach the aggregator. So now you have 3 pops on the detonator. And then also you have the Ryzeal plugin to set to basically recycle the detonator, and then also you could just attach again, because you can attach on your opponent's turn. Let's just say you could go plugin to to special summon ice, or you should special summon sword so you can get the +1. Just pretend that, and then we can attach the plasma hole. And then if your opponent activates an effect, you can go detonator effect and basically detach the plasma hole. And then you can go plasma hole effect and then make like either a Sky Crisis or a Zeus or a Exoton, depending on the situation. Abyss Dweller even, you know, Baguska even. So you can do all those things, which is very cool, just upon that 1-card combo. And that's just the 1-card combo. So you would have like 4 hand traps in hand, hopefully, or extra extenders to make that combo even better. So let's just see what happens when you have a 2-card combo. So this is the 2-card, I think like one of the better 2-card combos for the deck. So you go normal summon Ice Ryzeal effect, and then you are going to be able to special summon out sword effect is going to add to your hand an ice, since you already have the green, and then you are going to be able to go into the duo driver, and then you can go duo driver effect to detach 2 to search out the cross and then the plugin. Also, guys, you can play around certain hand traps and sequence these differently. I don't think like the sequencing is too important unless you're trying, because like your deck doesn't really lose to Droll, your deck doesn't really lose to Nibiru, but these are things that you can play around if you're scared about them. You can activate field spell, and then we can special summon out the X by sending aggregator, and then we can use X effect to get the node finally, and then we can go node. We're obviously playing the nib here. There's ways to play around nib here as well, but I don't think that's too important at this point. We can special summon out the red, and then we can go out to the detonator, and now we have cleared any. Now the field spell's live. Obviously, I think in a situation like this, I probably would have went plugin, because obviously if you like open plugin or something like that, or you just end up searching out plugin off a duo drive, I would just attach with plugin so you don't get nibbed, in my opinion, but that is something to consider too. And then you can go detonator, attach the aggregator, and at this point you can just send like one of the cards in hand. Mulcharmy is not bad for things like this. And then you can go into the Dugaris, and then Dugaris will be able to do its thing by detaching 1 or detaching 2. And then you can draw 2, discard 1, and you can discard the Mulcharmy, and now you have a nib in hand. And then you're also going to be able to go field spell and then target 2 in your graveyard. In my opinion, also always target 2 fires if you can, so you can play around Bestial, because this is an excellent Bestial angle. I mean, obviously you can just negate with field spell too, and now you just get extra follow-up with the sword Ryzeal. You could also just go into another rank 4 in this situation with the Ryzeal plugin, obviously, because the sword we just drew off. So like I could just make a Dweller or a Baguska or something like that, but I think that's kind of overextending. I think, like I said, you want to keep the follow-up, so this is kind of perfectly fine in the fact that we can set plugin, which gets us another attach on detonator, so that's 4 pops, and then we also have the Ryzeal cross, which is a monster effect negate, and then we also have hand traps in hand, presumably. So I have this Nibiru, and I have plenty of follow-up too. So this board in particular isn't the best, but also we obviously then pass to our opponent, and then we can go plug in to special summon one of our rank 4s. Also, for that reason, we could just special summon out this, pass to our opponent, and then use plug-in, and then special summon the ice, and then we can go attach the hole, detach hole off detonator, pop, use hole effect, and then we can make a Baguska, we can make an Exoton, We could make a Typhon, you know, any of these things still. So I think Hole is very good in respect of being in rotation. There's also a world where you can set up Hole where it's like an interruption because this is a pop 2. I think it's just way more value to set plugin, because if they just destroy your detonator for whatever reason and put it in the graveyard, and there's plenty of ways to do that, you know, plugin plays around that entirely. So yeah, guys, I hope you enjoyed my Ryzeal deck profile plus my combos and the rundown. We went over a lot of just the things I feel like people weren't exactly talking about, and like the little niche interactions that you need to know for like things like the mirror match. Also, the mirror match, like I said, guys, very tough, but I think you guys have to look for the edge in it. We'll be seeing you guys later. Please leave a like down below if you guys want to see a full combo guide on spreadsheet combo guide on Ryzeal. Make sure to get this video to 200 likes. We'll be seeing you guys later. Comment down below what you guys thought. See you guys later.